Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Wing It F1 podcast. This episode is our Emilia Romagna Grand Prix review, where we talk through our immediate reactions to the race, what we thought of it, and whether we were happy with it, whether we were unhappy with it. Every little minutiae of detail is going to be definitely covered, and we won't forget everything, but we normally do. So anyway, I'm Freddie Coates, and I'm here with Adam Dickinson and Nigel Chew to run you through what I just said. Adam, how are you? You doing good, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I've finished reporting on the race and looking forward to chatting, see what you both thought of it.
Nigel, you all right?
Yeah, I'm just a bit jealous that Adam's just had a bacon sandwich, you say, so I wish I could have some of it.
Yeah, we were
it was a very good bacon sandwich.
Been on the Zoom call for a few minutes, and Adam's just been scoffing a bacon sandwich that he said he enjoyed more than the race. And he didn't say that because it was a bad race. He said it because the bacon sandwich was amazing. So we're sat here kind of jealous. So yeah, let's start with you, Adam, on your opinion of that race then. Not as good as bacon?
Yeah, well, no, I think it wasn't necessary. It was more to do with the quality of the bacon sandwich, but I didn't think it was a very good race really up until kind of the Verstappen crash. And then it kind of came alive a bit more. But yeah, I kind of obviously a lot to do with strategy and tyres more than what was actually happening on track, I thought. So yeah, I think, it was made a good one. It was made into a good race by the kind of drama at the end. But yeah, it was here.
It was kind of what I feared of the lack of overtaking going into the weekend, and it's basically what happened. Even if the DRS was a bit longer, I'm not sure if it would have helped. Yeah, it's just a difficult track to overtake on, as it was when even before F1 came here this year. It was an okay race, probably the worst of the new track or returning track races, though, I'd say.
Yeah,
Would you say it was better than Portimao?
I preferred it to Portimao personally, as a sort of whole race kind of thing. In my opinion, I don't know if that's Portimao obviously had the absolute stark chaos of the start, which is amazing. That was brilliant. But then I don't know, Portimao seemed signed, sealed, and delivered quite early on. Whereas with this one, I thought I was pleasantly surprised by the strategy, and I was really interested in Hamilton's overcut because he was sort of flickering between the 27, 28 second pit stop margin, which was really interesting to see whether he would come out splitting Bottas and Verstappen ahead of Bottas or behind Verstappen. And that was constantly changing. And then there seemed a few times to be the threat of Verstappen getting past Bottas to potentially, if Mercedes needed to gamble on Bottas's defence, because if Verstappen had got past and had a clean run to the finish, then he would have been ahead of Hamilton then from Hamilton's pit stop. And that there was a lot of balls still rolling in play, and I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the VSC brought that on a bit early, but that's probably what would have happened anyway, I think.
Yeah. I think to be fair, to be fair, those 10 laps where Hamilton was trying to get the gap, that was pretty intense, and he was getting faster and faster to try and get the 27 and a half seconds he needed. Who knows what would have happened if Bottas didn't have the floor damage, or if Verstappen could have got past. And I was thinking we might get a repeat of the 2005 or 2006 race with Hamilton, the faster driver, coming out behind and then trying to make an overtake. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But yeah, those laps in the pit stop phases were pretty intense, which is something I enjoyed.
Yeah, I think I'd probably put it as better than Portimao, just to wrap up that one. And yeah, I think I think the VSD, it was a shame really that it happened, and kind of that robbed us of a bit more drama of whether Hamilton would come out in front of Bottas, or it looked like he would, but kind of whereabouts in relation to Bottas he would come out, but that kind of, we got repaid in that by the safety car at the end, so I guess it's all equal.
Yeah, it's all swings and roundabouts at the end. But Hamilton's win, Bottas' second place, resulted in the Constructors' Championship for Mercedes. There was a foregone conclusion going into this race that they would win it, I think. They needed a 4th place, and the team that has taken pole at every Grand Prix and has won all but 2 this year, not getting a 4th place finish is unlikely. Stranger things have happened, but it's unlikely. But this is an amazing achievement for them, isn't it? This is the record.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. So 7 titles in a row. I mean, what? It's like a football team or Premier League team winning 7 Premier League titles in a row. It just doesn't happen. It's just phenomenal to react to the rule changes and everything that's thrown at them, to every single member of the team doing their bit to develop the car and tune it, and then of course the drivers are the cherry on top of the cake to deliver on the track. It's just a phenomenal achievement, and it will probably be quite a long time before it's broken, especially if Mercedes can go on to win an 8th, 9th, or even 10th title in a row. It's just, I don't think words can justify the effort that's put in behind the scenes to do this. It's just unbelievable.
Well, that's helpful if we're doing a podcast. Yeah, it's, I think, kind of Nigel alluded to there, possibly the most incredible thing is they're probably going to win an 8th next year. It seems very unlikely that they won't. And, you know, obviously no one's going to discount them winning more kind of from that point as well. But yeah, just the, you know, consistency of having every element of the team pulling in the right direction at all times, which is something that, you know, no other team on the grid has managed to do kind of over that time. It's just, you know, absolutely an incredible achievement. Do you think it's a bigger achievement than Hamilton's 92 wins?
Yeah, personally.
Yeah, this is a team working at full pelt.
I think I go yeah as well.
Yeah, it's a team working at full pelt for the best part of a decade, at the best it can do. And I think, basically, yeah, like you say, they're likely to win an 8th coming from this. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win a 9th or 10th coming up with the regulation change, considering how they've done in previous regulation changes too. So it's going to be a whole, for this to be broken, this record's going to take up 10 years of the lives of everyone to be broken. It's seemingly impossible to be broken. And I think that's what they've done with this record, is they've put it at the heady heights that Schumacher's record felt like it was 2 or 3 years ago. And we're not going to be able, I think it's unbelievable for it to be broken until it happens. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're old and grey before it does happen.
I've got some news as well. I've just seen that Toto Wolff has confirmed that they will keep the black livery for next year. So anyone who's not watching F1 this year because Mercedes has got a black livery, we'll see you in 2022 when they go back to silver, as Toto Wolff says.
Fighting talk. I love it. They've done very well with all of their Black Lives Matter and BLM movement have Mercedes, and I think to renege on that would be a bit difficult for them anyway. I think
nice little throwback to our first podcast.
Yeah, our first podcast we recorded on the day they announced the black livery in Austria.
Yeah,
go check it out, guys.
The Genesis. Yeah,
we thought Ferrari were good. So, bringing it back to the race, Bottas, he came second in the end. He started on pole. He led from the start, and led until the VSC, until he pitted at response to Verstappen. Bottas had floor damage for the majority of the race. He got it from lap 2, from when Vettel had sent one up the inside of Tosa on Magnussen, which spun him round on the first lap. And Mercedes have actually taken a picture of this and put it on their Twitter account of the chunk of Ferrari front wing that was indented into Bottas' car. No wonder he was losing time. Yeah, Adams held up a ring binder, and it's basically the size of that. Was a big chunk of front wing that Vettel was driving 40 laps without, well, the whole race without. They didn't change his front wing when he pitted. And also, in Bottas's car. So no wonder he was making mistakes. Do we think if the Bottas didn't have the damage, do we think he would have waltzed away from Verstappen?
I think so, yeah. I do think that, because I think Mercedes did have the faster car by probably half a second or so this weekend, and without the full damage, it would have been interesting to see if he would have beat Hamilton as well, even with the VSC, because I think with the VSC, didn't it go off when Hamilton was like halfway through the pit lane, so he didn't gain the full 10 seconds or however much.
Yeah, it was only 4.5 seconds or so when he came out. Yeah,
so if Bottas didn't have that damage, he could have still won the race. So he's a bit unlucky in that respect. I think he said he tried to avoid it by going by putting the car in the middle so he didn't get a puncture because he saw it late. But because something that big, you can't. There's not much you can do really.
Yeah. I think, yeah, he was the first car to actually get to the damage, and he was the only car to actually be struck by it and damaged by the damage. There was a few little skirmishes on lap one that left a bit of carbon fibre decked around. We had a chunk of Stroll's front wing basically intact, just sat there as if it had been placed at the exit of Tamburello. They seem to be a little bit slow on getting to it. Do we think they just didn't want to cancel the race straight away?
For the race?
Right. Do you think they needed it as like a safety car or something? Bring out a safety car,
right. Hold on.
Or a VSC. They managed to get the chunk of Stroll. They obviously didn't spot or didn't get to the chunk of Vettel before it struck its damage.
You threw me off with this question, Freddie. I don't really know what to answer. Yes, they should have got there faster.
I think, like, on the safety car point, there's been quite a few races off the top of my head where they've kind of stopped it after one lap, or maybe, I mean, Mugello is the one that springs to mind straight off. I mean, they did that twice. Or there was from the start, and then the safety car restart where they called kind of another, I think, a red flag kind of immediately after the restart. So, you know, I don't think it was too much of a factor, really.
I don't think it needed a red flag.
If anything, it increases drama. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe I was surprised there wasn't an immediate VSC for it, is my perspective on that. Verstappen got into second at the start. Let's talk about him for a bit. He got into second at the start, even though he had a bit of wheel spin as well. Hamilton just basically lit up the tyres a bit. There was a bit of painted over track that did not help his launch, and that put him back in the pack. And he was actually fighting Gasly and Ricciardo, who were trying to launch themselves into a podium position from the start and try and wreck the Mercedes race, because that's all they can really do these days. If they can wreck a Mercedes race, then they can just have a giggle for half a lap. But Verstappen got into second, fighting with Bottas. He eventually got past after Bottas made a mistake into Ravazza 1, made a few mistakes into Ravazza 1 and gave Verstappen a few sniffs. But Verstappen eventually was able to drag past. But he had a fairly strange exit to the race. There was a tyre failure on quite young, hard tyres going into Villeneuve, and he was spun round into the gravel and nearly back onto the track. Do you guys have anything to say about that? Do you think it was just a tyre failure?
I wonder if he was pushing hard, wasn't he, behind Bottas? I wonder if he was maybe attacking the curbs too much. Some of the curbs at Imola are quite brutal. So I wonder if that could be. That's the only thing I can think of. It was very, very strange, reminiscent of Kimi Räikkönen in 2005 at the Nürburgring, the type of failure we just spun. Yeah, that's the only thing I think of that caused the accident. But other than that, I think Verstappen did well to take advantage of Bottas's troubles yet again. And yeah, it's just these little things are what's costing Red Bull, because they're having to push, and Verstappen's having to push at his absolute maximum just to try and get on level terms. Whereas Mercedes, they can always not cruise, but they can go 95% rather than the full 100%. So yeah.
Yeah, I think just kind of one to watch if anything comes out of it, but you know, watch this space, I think.
Yeah, watch this space. Good point to make, because it was a pretty scary tyre failure. It completely ripped off the rim. I was conscious of it at the time. I thought something had come off the car to do that. I thought he'd have to have had a cut or gone over, like you say, either a really sharp bit of curb. But there's the particular bit very ante-alta, the chicane at the top of the hill in the middle of the track, where they basically just go straight over a sausage curb as part of the track. And that's the racing line. And I assumed that was how Bottas got floor damage, actually. I didn't think he had picked up a bit of debris. So I was expecting this to be more of an attritional track in the way that Austria sometimes is, where you see cars just accidentally touch a curb and their suspension cripple and they're off into the gravel. But I'm surprised we didn't have more reliability issues in terms of the structure of the car. But I suppose they're built pretty strongly, these expensive racing cars. We did see a few other retirements. Ocon and Gasly retired. Gasly was the first retirement, but we kind of expected that one. I did. I kind of expected that one because he had power unit issues on the grid. But AlphaTauri have had a phenomenal weekend. It was a bit of a heartbreak, I thought, even when he pulled into the pits, even if it was expected. What did you think of Gasly's performance over the weekend?
Yeah, I think, it was fantastic. You know, obviously there's the factors if they'd been there, you know, before for the filming and all of that. But yeah, he was just flawless really for up till his engine packed up, or was it water temperature issue?
Let's assume it was.
I think it was water pressure. Yeah, he got squeezed out a bit at the start, which was a disappointment. Although, you know, I did think with Verstappen and Ricciardo kind of around him, it would be quite difficult to, you know, kind of hold position or, you know, make much ground from the start. But yeah, he's just had yet another really strong weekend, and Red Bull have said that they're not looking at him for the for the Red Bull seat. And you know, I don't know whether that makes it easier in a sense, because he's not got that on his mind. It's just, you know, he's got to go out and get the best result he can every race, and, you know, try and show off himself to other suitors.
Yeah, I think he is being courted by a few other teams, perhaps for 2022 or and beyond, because he's been the driver of the season for me. And I think it was just such a shame that he wasn't able to perform on the level today, because he could well have got a podium if things had transpired pretty well. He definitely would have been in the fight for that. Kvyat, his teammate, finished fourth at the end of the race after a late gamble on softs paying off. He put in a few gutsy moves, one particular one around the outside of Piratella on Charles Leclerc. Nigel, what do you think about AlphaTauri this weekend? Kvyat performing well and in the race, and Gasly, obviously, as Adam said, being flawless.
Yeah, he could have been third and fifth for AlphaTauri this weekend on pure pace as well. It was incredible, and I think the testing they had earlier this year, that probably helped with just one practice session, it looks like. But Danny Kvyat in those last 10 laps, 5 laps after the safety car, was on fire. Some of the overtakes he pulled off were very, very brave on such a track which you have to be committed on most of the corners. It was phenomenal stuff, and it was good to see as well, because I think Kvyat's had a few tricky races recently, so he's still fighting there. He's still making the most of any chances he's getting as well. And I think the AlphaTauri, what's really good about it is it looks like a comfortable car to drive for Gasly and Kvyat, and I think with these slightly tougher tracks that we've seen, it might be helping them a bit with with Imola having some awkward curbs and grass and gravel and stuff. I think that's what's helping them. So yeah, another great weekend for AlphaTauri.
The final podium place did eventually go to Daniel Ricciardo, picking up another bit of silverware for Renault after Verstappen hunkered it into the gravel with his tyre failure. Daniel Ricciardo, another podium, did the shoey this time. Do you think, solid drive from him? I guess that's all we can really say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It comes down, I think, to Perez kind of making the decision to slide out of the third place at the safety car, which I'm sure we'll touch on in more depth later. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, someone's got to be there to pick up the pieces, and Ricciardo was that person. And it's I think, as you've said before, Freddie, that it's nice because Renault are one of the most depressing teams when they're not doing well. And it's nice for them, to have some optimism about them.
Yeah, I don't really know what more to say. We're kind of repeating what we say after every race. Ricciardo good again. Take the podium. Yeah, I don't really know what to say.
Yeah, Ocon did look like he was on the pace quite early on of Ricciardo, but then in qualifying, Ricciardo just pulled out of the bag, and Ocon, I think, I don't know if he had any issues where he had some track limits abuse or not, but he didn't get out of Q2, which was a bit of a surprise actually, because this is a track you'd expect to have suited Renault. In the practice session, Ricciardo and Ocon were neck and neck pretty much on times, and I think they were 5th and 6th on the sheets. So they had a fast car, and it was a shame for Ocon that his qualifying didn't work out, because that sort of marred him in the midfield, and then he just basically lost power by the looks and pulled up on the back straight in the middle of the laps. So not the most, an encouraging weekend for Ocon, but no reward for it, unfortunately. When it mattered, it didn't really work in qualifying, which is a bit of a shame. Do we think there's anything to add to that? I think it's just Ricciardo pulled out of the bag again.
I think the problem this weekend was track position. So a bad qualifying really puts you back, because you're not really able to come back in the races, and that's the problem Ocon had, as well as his other gearbox and whatever happened to him. He's not doing awfully, is Ocon. I think he's just not doing as well as people expected coming into the season, and I think he's doing it just about enough to deserve to stay on the grid and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because he had such high expectations coming back in this year, obviously, after the year at Force India, and then, highly touted by Mercedes, and he could have been at Mercedes this year, which would be quite strange to think about. But yeah, I think it's because he was so highly touted, and also because with Ricciardo moving on, he's, the future of the team in theory, or kind of when, he was thought to be the driver that they build around, and he's not really looking like that so far this season. He's kind of doing enough that they're not going to try and kick him out. But I think there just needs to be some improvement, and it's not going to get any easier next year. He needs to be on top of the car for next year, because Alonso's coming in.
Yeah, he's definitely one to watch when we get into 2021. And Alonso's been loitering around Renault like there's no tomorrow as well. He's definitely starting the teammate games, I'd imagine. He has been. He is a driver that's for himself as Alonso. And I don't expect that to change, even though he has competed in World Endurance Championship and Dakar, where he has at least seen how you have to work as a team. I don't think he's going to come into Formula One and shake off any of his old tricks. I reckon they'll be straight back in. The Winging It F1 podcast strategy award today, I think, should go to Racing Point for their extreme overcut of pretty much everyone apart from the top three, with Sergio Perez. You already mentioned track position, Nigel, being so important. They went long and were able to use the track position of Kevin Magnussen going long and avoiding his first stint, extending his first stint, didn't avoid it, he still did it. And using that to hold up the rivals. And Perez ended up in a net best of the rest position coming into the closing stages. Do we think?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's a shame.
Yeah, what happened afterwards, though?
Yeah, exactly. That's the worst bit.
That's the issue. So I'm not sure. For my strategy award, which doesn't actually exist, but
it's like the Ashes. It's like a little cup.
I'd have rescinded it, really. After that, Yeah, I mean, they did exceptionally well. I picked him out after Saturday as a driver to watch because he was able to, mix up strategy or whatever. And it just felt like, day for a Perez special, and could have had a podium his first of the year. But yeah, they pitted at the end, thinking that they'd be able to come back on fresh tyres and work through. And you can see why they did, because there's been, several races. I guess Monza is one that springs to mind, where there's, the drivers stick at the front on worse tyres and end up just getting completely swamped. But in the end, that didn't happen. I think the Russell crash, extending the safety car period for a bit longer, decreasing the number of laps that he'd have to fight back through, didn't help him either. Another good drive for Perez. It's just a shame that they kind of, lost. They didn't get all the potential they could have at the end.
Yeah, going long in modern F1, going long in the first stint, it's a really good thing if you're able to do it and you don't lose too much time. Hamilton and Perez are arguably the two best drivers at doing this, at managing their tyres over a 30, 40 lap stint and getting the most out of them. Because if there is a virtual safety car or safety car, you can gain 10 seconds from that if others are pitted. You can keep your tyres alive and your rivals are in traffic after they've pitted. You can gain time as well. So it's a really handy skill to have, which is what Perez was able to do. It's just a shame, as Adam has pointed out, that Racing Point got the wrong strategy when it mattered most. Because, I mean, it happened about 50 laps into race into the first safety car, or the only safety car, and we didn't really see too much. We didn't see too much overtaking, so not too sure what Racing Point were thinking, really.
Yeah, I think it. If Stroll had been in the running, kind of, around that group, then I think that would have helped them out, because they'd have been able to split strategy on that. But obviously he wasn't after the first lap. Sorry, Freddie.
Perez said on Sky Sports at the end of it, looking at it, it didn't make sense at the time. The call was very late, but it's always easy to take the right decision after the race. So hindsight's 2020. He says the team are very disappointed and it was the wrong call. And we basically gave the podium to Ricciardo. And it was a great idea at first. The whole first stint thing worked really well, obviously. But it was thrown away, basically, unfortunately, for them.
They did get their only podium of the year through Lance Stroll kind of going long at Monza and then not even having to pit. He got completely away with it because of the red flag. So,
but then they missed out on winning that race, which Lance Stroll should have won, really.
Yes, but everyone was celebrating his podium.
Everyone's happy for Gasly, aren't they?
No, I'm sorry. If there's a race winning opportunity, you don't win. Once in a lifetime opportunity.
There's always a race winning opportunity.
We discussed this on the Monza podcast, so go and check that out on our backlog.
Lance Stroll's overrated. That's all I need to know.
Back catalogue.
Well, that's going to be another episode, isn't it? Overrated, Lance.
We had a bad weekend as well this weekend.
That's a hot take. Everyone always thinks Lance Stroll's underrated.
Yeah, exactly. Because they think he's underrated, I think he's overrated. Yeah, they do. I don't know why.
Adam, he just exists. He's just Stroll again happening.
I think he's rated accurately, but then Nigel thinks everyone's overrated. So apart from 15 drivers on the grid are overrated, and then the other 5 are fulfilling their potential at the moment.
Pretty much, yeah.
Lance Stroll did finish 13th in the end. He was caught up in the melee at the start and obviously lost half his front wing, and that sort of spelled out the rest of the race for him. Really didn't really make any impression on anything. That's all we really have to say on Lance Stroll, I think.
Not much of a conversation point.
I think we've exhausted the Lance Stroll conversation starters.
I don't think we have, actually.
Go on,
I don't think we
start
have.
a Lance Stroll conversation.
I think we have on this race, but not the wider topics of Lance Stroll.
The wider topics of Lance Stroll. It's like the curious case of Benjamin Button.
I mean, it's not one that you'll walk into a bar at the moment and go, "Oh yeah, did you hear about Lance Stroll's Emilia Romagna race?" No, you'll never guess what happened. Yeah, he had a bad first lap and then was out of the running from them. Really, it's not loads to say on it. I don't think. But
I've got an image of you doing that now, Adam, just going into a bar and just speaking to someone. You get a glass at one end of the bar and you roll it down the bar to them and they catch it and they look over at you, don't know who you are, and you're like, hey, did you hear about Lance Stroll's Emilia Romagna Grand Prix?
I'll post-it note on with like a Canadian flag on the glass. And, like drinks it and sees it.
Yeah. One thing to say about Perez, he did try hard on those soft tyres and he put a barnstormer of a move around the outside of Alex Albon into Villeneuve. Even though he was on fresh soft to his old hards, it's still a ballsy ass move from Perez there. It took Alex Albon by surprise so much that he spun out the race.
Wow.
Oh my God, I may as well give up, was his thoughts. And he spun. We're not going to go into Albon because we always go into Albon and into the topic of Albon. And
you wouldn't have to if he wasn't so bad.
I mean, this wasn't his worst race. He was bottled up in the pack, but he was on for a potential podium at the end until he was so shocked by Perez.
Podium?
He lost it by a few hundredths in qualifying, to be honest. He a few hundredths behind Ricciardo and a tenth behind Gasly. He should have been a tenth or two up, and his track limits abuse was off the scale. It seemed literally, there's Alex Albon. What, has he had a lap time deleted? Yes. A lap time deleted? Yes. Oh, is Alex Albon upset? Yes, he's had his lap time deleted, obviously, because he couldn't set a lap without.
He had a stonking Q2 final run though. He actually beat Verstappen. Pressure on, went round. So that was happening.
On his soft tyres and Verstappen's mediums.
That was nice for him.
Yeah, he can take a picture of that and put it on his wall because it's never happening again.
Not me saying that. Not me saying that.
I'm not I know.
I've been converted mostly by Nigel, to be honest, to this Alex Albon. Anti-Alex Albon parade.
I think you've been promoted to leader based on that. He's never going to have a good lap ever again. So he should just take this one and enjoy it because that's it, Alex. Every lap you ever have in the future of your F1 career, you're just going to crash.
Charles Leclerc had a good race. It seems to be part and parcel now. Maybe that Ferrari's got a bit of pace in it, but 5th place for Leclerc, holding off a charging Perez at the end. Not bad.
Very good, I think. Again,
not bad. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, he's having kind of quiet races. It's not. There's not many where he fills up the TV coverage. They're all always focusing on whichever battle he's in. He just kind of gets his nose into clear air in a good position and just keeps pounding in the laps and consistency. And I can't think of many errors that he's made this season. That's kind of, I think that's probably his biggest build on from last year.
Yeah.
There's certainly no times where he's kind of, I guess there was Austria too, where
he ploughed into the back of everyone. Yeah.
But there's been, I can't think of anywhere he's kind of been in a top 5 position and lost it, through a driver error. He's just, he's, as we said, we think I think me and Nigel thought it was better this season than last season. And, as long as he keeps doing this, then, it takes all the pressure off him and onto Ferrari.
Did you say you can't think of a time when he's done a mistake when he's been in the top 5?
Yeah.
Over this season.
What about Brazil? Oh, right.
Yeah. And I don't think Brazil was his fault either. But
no, I don't either.
but this season, I think that's something he's really built on.
Yeah, the need for perfection in the midfield is so much more than it seems to be at the top of the field. When you're in a car that's where it was last year, that was separated quite a lot, then you can afford to have a lock-up here and there. But when you're in the midfield, you've got cars all around. You can't lose a tenth in qualifying. And Otherwise, you're 2 rows back. And Leclerc's got that nailed. He's absolutely covered with midfield driving. And yeah, I think you're right. His race performances and his sheer pace he's able to get out of that car is ridiculous.
You know, it could have even been slightly better today, I think. I think in the first stint, he was gaining on Ricciardo before they were pitting, but then they responded to Ricciardo. So perhaps he could have overcut him, because it looks like he was just about somebody to have the pace on Ricciardo. And he did well to hold on to 5th as well, with Perez all over him. I thought he was going to be a sitting duck, especially with the lack of straight line speed in the Ferrari engine. So he did really well to hold on to that. Good weekend.
I think it's interesting. This has got to be one of the strongest midfields that we've had. You know, in terms of you sometimes get drivers, like Vettel in terms of world champions that are kind of, lower down now, but having Leclerc and Ricciardo, kind of two, especially Leclerc, really young driver just at the start of his F1 journey, kind of fighting through the midfield. And, you had that, you've got Gasly there, obviously, Ricciardo, as we've mentioned, Perez is always there, the two McLaren boys.
Alonso.
Yeah, Albon. So, yeah, it's having yours.
Sorry, that was an instinct.
But kind of it's just a strong midfield, and that's great to watch.
That's one of the things
That's
one of the things that excites me most about the driver lineups we've got coming up, because, and particularly for 2022 with the regulation change, because that could hopefully provide a bit more parity with the competition. Because then you've got Hamilton hopefully staying at Mercedes, you've got Leclerc at Ferrari, you've got Verstappen at Red Bull, you've got Ricciardo going to McLaren, you've got Alonso coming in for Alpine, and so that's 5 teams which have got a lot behind them, and a lot of good engineers back at base, all with a very, very good lead driver. You got Vettel going to Aston Martin. Hopefully he can bring it back as well and give a lead there. Clutching at straws, and it is a bit of a fingers crossed for that, rather than basing it on his recent form. But anyway, and then you've got George Russell staying at Williams, who we'll get onto, but he's a good little handy driver. So you've got a team leader pretty much everywhere. And
yeah, I will say, even though I do have a go at quite a lot of the grid, this is a very high quality F1 field at the moment. Probably one of the highest quality fields this century, probably. There's so much talent in there, so much. I don't know what it is. They really have a good go, especially in the midfield. When there's a chance, they're really the best of what the drivers have comes out when the pressure's on. I think that's fantastic to see, and they've put on a great show as well. Even at Imola on Sunday, when it wasn't the most exciting race, there was still some incredible brave overtakes in those last 5 to 10 laps, which we might not have had, say, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago with the field that we had then.
There's no Maldonados, there's no Harriantos, there's no sort of
Vandergaard,
or is there?
Yeah, and I think that's also due to the smaller, there's less teams, less absolute back markers for kind of to give jobs to those drivers.
The less we say about the rumours about Nikita Mazepin, I think the better then. Moving on to the Alfa Romeo
Russia's next
team.
world champion.
Russia's next world champion, did you say?
Yeah.
I think he's underrated.
Oh, we'll have a Mazepin debate at some point, I think, because he'll be announced in a month, I reckon. Alfa Romeo, let's move on. Kimi Räikkönen and Antonio Giovinazzi both finished in the points. 9th for Räikkönen, 10th for Giovinazzi. Good. On a weekend where they celebrated 110 years of Alfa Romeo. Not bad at all. I mean, Räikkönen played the Perez strategy card pretty well and didn't pit at the end, I don't think. He went on even longer and went on for the softs in the first place, so was able to hold on to those points. Antonio Giovinazzi had a crap qualifying, starting 20th, but was 14th at the end of lap 1 and finished in the points. So hats off where it's due, I think, to this team.
I think I think we'd have to flip it and call it the Raikkonen strategy. You know, I'd call it that. And Perez did the Raikkonen strategy, even Hamilton. It was. In some ways, it could have been even better had he, stayed out a few more laps in the safety car. There could have been a spectacular result there. But even as it was, in some ways, it makes it more of a genuine result that he did pit, and they still got 9th and 10th on genuine race pace, obviously helped out by a few retirements or mistakes at the end, but you as we say, you've got to be there to pick up those pieces, and some teams aren't, and they've been able to do that. And Giovinazzi must have been watching a lot of tape from Raikkonen's start at the Nürburgring and managed to pull off a similar escapade.
Giovinazzi had to work for it as well. He had Latifi actually scrapping with him for the points as well at the last few laps. Ooh. Latifi did finish about 6 or 7 tenths off Giovinazzi at the end, and that's close enough probably to get a good DRS run for a pass if Giovinazzi's not got it from Raikkonen, which he didn't. He was 4 seconds behind. So Giovinazzi did have to work for it, and I think they've both done pretty well. I think you're right, Adam. They're the ones who nailed the strategy and were there to pick up the pieces where others weren't. And namely, the other who wasn't there to pick up the pieces was a certain Mr. George Russell, who has had a very interesting weekend. He was confirmed again for Williams in 2021 on Friday. Despite his contract being there have been obvious rumours that Sergio Perez is going there. We do have a lot to say about him, I think, because he did have a bit of a scuffle when he lost it under the safety car and crashed into the wall.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him. I actually do. It's one of the worst things that you can do as an F1 driver. Just making an error like that behind the safety car, just lit up the rear tyres, they're a bit cold, and then went straight into the wall, unfortunately. It'll be interesting to see how he bounces back, because this will be a really good test of his character and how he is as a driver. If he can come back and still perform really well, then I think that's a really good sign, because sometimes drivers will make a big mistake like that and they won't really recover from it, or they won't get back to how they were. So it's a big test for George Russell now.
Yeah, I think it's not so much. It doesn't feel like he lost a definite point scoring finish, because I think it still would have been difficult at the end to hold off. So I don't kind of view it as a hugely significant mistake. I think it's just another chance at points. It's kind of the cumulative effect of that. It's another chance that he's lost, but I've no doubt that he'll be able to bounce back from it. He seemed very down after the race, but he's got 2-week turnaround, and just to be in that position. He had an outstanding qualifying as well. It's another just really solid weekend from him. Can't imagine, he's one of the most underrated
quite
drivers.
A big error, though. What do you think?
It was the way he lit it up. It was very.
There's no Ericsson either.
There was no Ericsson. Ericsson put a tweet out saying, "Where was my location? Oh, it's America," citing the Ericsson hit us line from Grosjean's engineer at Baku 2017, I want to say. Maybe 18. 18. Cool. It was a silly mistake, and it's a bit of a shame for him, because it is a blot on his copybook when you think about it. It was pretty much, if things had played out as they did, Albon spinning and so on, that's a 9th place finish for him. And I think, maybe Kimi Räikkönen would have got past him. I don't think Giovinazzi would have done, because Kimi Räikkönen would have been on soft tyres. So that's then a 10th place gone. Last time George Russell was running in 10th place pretty legitimately in Hockenheim in 2019, he ran wide and let his teammate by. And it's
and Mugello.
Mugello he was running in the points for a long time. You're right, and
he was there up until the last restart. I think
on the last restart, that was aided by the lapped cars being allowed to unlap themselves and essentially do a formation lap when everyone else couldn't, to heat up their tyres, which is an easier one for him to avoid the blame for. But it's another mistake that's cost Williams points, and it's just a shame because we know there's a driver in there. We know there's a driver in there who deserves points. We know there's a driver in there who did not deserve to have any rumours about his contract at all. The rumours that should be there should be, are they going to sign him for another year? Not, is he going to be off the grid? Because he's a phenomenal driver. Fernando Alonso said in an interview that he's the driver who's most impressed him. And people, Ed Straw's written a number of articles comparing George Russell to Alonso in his early careers, where he's just appeared fantastic. And if he gets in a good car, he will be amazing. And unfortunately, it's just missed out. And it's like the Hulkenberg podium curse, where when Hulkenberg, he's on for a podium, there's a little mistake. And it's that kind of thing. And it's sad. I think we're all just a bit sad because we know it.
I don't think it defines him in the same way though, because I don't think there's been too many.
Year 2 for him, yeah.
There's not been too many off the top of my head where he has kind of lost it based on his error. This is the biggest one that stands out, and yes, it is a huge mistake and one that he shouldn't be making, and will probably haunt him until he does get that point finish, which is really tough. But I think it's not on the same level. It does feel like a matter of time, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's still doing a very good job. Yes, I do think he's slightly vulnerable in the races, but we haven't truly seen it because of the car he has. But there's no doubt that his natural speed is exceptionally good. I can't wait to see him in a better car in the future.
Same.
Those points will be all the more sweet when he does get them in a better car in the future. And who knows, maybe there's still chances coming up this year. I wouldn't put it past.
Yeah, hopefully next year with Williams.
Hopefully next year with Williams. That's a good point. Yeah, we want Williams to do well.
He needs to get a win. Just his first race where he scored points. He just wins it and gets a fastest lap.
If we have a Brawn story, then maybe. But
yeah,
I think it's a bit more unlikely that will be the case. But who knows? Hamilton still hasn't signed a contract.
Oh no.
Let's not get into that. Who has signed a contract to the 2 Alfa Romeo drivers who you mentioned earlier, Kimi Räikkönen and Giovinazzi, staying for another year. Based on that performance, I guess it's from both drivers. They're solid and dependable, I guess, is what we're going for. Is that the PR line?
I'm not pleased with it.
Not say average and exciting would be my bit.
If Mick Schumacher had the choice, we don't know if he did. If he had the choice of Alfa and Haas, I don't know why he's gone with Haas. But this is slightly going off. Personally, for me, it should have been Raikkonen and Schumacher at Alfa Romeo next. I think one of the drivers, Giovinazzi and Raikkonen, should have stayed on. But keeping both of them, I'm really not sure that's the way forward because they both. I think Raikkonen has done a good job. I don't think Giovinazzi's done anything too special this year, and he has had a couple of seasons now to prove his worth. And for me, I don't think he's done enough. And I'd rather see someone like Mick Schumacher get a chance. I'm not. I don't know. I just don't think it's the best choice that they could have made.
It kind of feels like, where is this going? Like, are they hoping that Giovinazzi just kind of transforms into, because at the moment, I don't think any other midfield team would pick him up. So are they just kind of hoping he transforms to a driver of that level? Or, is it still Ferrari that, is the end goal? I don't think so. And obviously with Raikkonen, he's dependable, but he's not.
He's not a salary driver. They're paying Raikkonen to be there.
He's not exceptionally fast.
it seems to be like
Sorry.
no, it's all right. The Alfa Romeo contract with Sauber has been renewed for 2021, which I kind of assumed it was just Alfa Romeo now, not Alfa Romeo Sauber still really. So it's still really the Sauber team, just with a different name. So I think because this announcement has come with it, I have a feeling that they wanted to keep Raikkonen and don't have control of the Giovinazzi seat. And I think they've now got the money to keep Raikkonen, because I think they could have been, up until the Alfa Romeo lineup was Alfa Romeo sponsorship was confirmed, I've got a bit of a suspicion that they would have gone with Giovinazzi as the mentor, because that's all they could have afforded. It's not a team that's got a lot of cash reserve from history. They very nearly were off the grid in 2016, and the fact that they're still on the grid is at the expense of Manta, because if they had been in 11th in the 2016 Constructors Championship, I doubt they would still be here on this grid, actually, as a team. And I think it seems to me a bit like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a very prudent lineup at all. They're both technically minded drivers, but
do you think?
I don't think they're needed.
Do you think
a salary driver?
Do you think it was linked to Alfa Romeo? That Alfa Romeo wanted him there to renew their sponsorship, which is why he's there. I don't know.
I think an Italian
and then
driver,
they can have adverts with him driving around in Monaco in a Giulia or whatever.
I think it's. Look at me. Kimi Räikkönen drive Stelvio. It's basically that. It's they've got an Italian driver in the car and a world champion in the other one. That's a good marketing lineup for them.
Schumacher and Raikkonen's like a lot stronger than that.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't make any sense. Real PR of that. I was hearing, I think in September, that Giovinazzi was staying on from the Italian media. And I was really surprised when I saw that and heard that. So it turns out it's true. And I don't know, did you guys think that Giovinazzi deserves to be on the grid?
Probably.
He's had a good run of it. He deserved to be given a go in Formula One. His junior career was brilliant. And his GP2 season was fantastic. And I think what kind of harmed him was 2 years out of it. I think if he'd gone up straight away with the progression, I think he could have done really well. I feel like he earned the chance. He really earned the chance, and he waited for his chance, and he got it. And he's definitely improved this year than he was last year. But the gradient hasn't been enough, in my opinion.
I think there's not been kind of any. There's not been many races or any that kind of stand out as, oh yeah, Giovinazzi was really good that weekend. And I agree. It's good that he was given a chance, and I do think he earned that and deserved that. But I don't really think he does deserve to be on the grid just based off. He's not like he's a really good, consistent driver, but equally it's not like, he has really massive highs that kind of outweigh the rest of the lows. What do you think, Nigel?
I'd have to agree. I'm usually sometimes a bit reluctant about putting new blood or new young drivers into the team, but in this scenario, you've got a youngish driver who's not able to beat someone who's in their 40s. I do think taking on the F2 championship leader is the thing to do. So I'm very surprised that it hasn't happened, and I'm even more surprised if, like I said before, if Mick Schumacher decided to, if he had the choice, if Mick Schumacher didn't want to go to Alfa Romeo. So I think Giovinazzi's a bit fortunate to have another season next year where he has to deliver, and he's got to take his chance, because I think many drivers who would put in who would perform like him, like I can't speak. Many drivers who would have performed like Giovinazzi this year would have been kicked out of F1.
Yeah, he's got a chance that not many have. I think my other thought on this is, like, if I was someone either involved in the team or looking to get involved in the team, I kind of think why? You know, what are they? You're either getting involved in a team that's running around at the back of the pack most weekends and getting the odd point here and there, you know, and so you're either kind of getting involved in that just for the sake of being in F1, or, you know, if you're getting involved in Williams, you're thinking, well, they've had new investment, they've got a star of the future in the seat, you know, they could be going places. You know, if Haas, you know, there's stuff to get excited about there. Obviously, Mick Schumacher coming in, and the way they've kind of, you know, tried to take a bit of a different approach to being an F1 team. Yeah. Aston Martin are coming in, you know, it's excitement at that team. But, you know, if I was thinking of, you know, getting involved with Alfa Romeo as a sponsor, or, you know, a chief engineer or something like that, I'd kind of be looking and thinking, you know, what's their ambition, or is this it? Is this what they're happy with at the moment?
They don't have a USP, really, do they? Apart from the fact that they haven't done what everyone would do. Yeah. It's the wrong time for continuity.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are lining up driver lineups. They're lining up lineups for 2021 going into 2022. Sainz is on a 2-year contract. I think Ricciardo's on a 2-year contract. Alonso is as well. And I would imagine that if they sign Hamilton again, it'll be on a couple of years contract. I mean, yeah, they deserve to be. But
Alfa Romeo,
yeah. This is the time for continuity, is going into a regulation change.
I agree.
I think going into it with two drivers who aren't entirely convincing for their future, Kimi because he's ancient now in Formula One terms, and Giovinazzi because you're kind of expecting him to be sacked next year. And that means that what we've got is for Alfa in 2022 is the situation we've got with Haas now, which is what is looking to be two inexperienced drivers coming in without the technical mindset to be able to develop the car and bring information forward when they're simulating the 2022 car, which you can get with Raikkonen and Giovinazzi as they're very technically minded drivers. Raikkonen has been earmarked throughout his career in F1 as being very, very good and succinct with his technical knowledge of the car and what happens and linking it back when he gets back to the garage. Giovinazzi has spent so much time as a simulator driver for Ferrari. He knows how, and he's been credited with setup changes overnight that have given them pole positions and wins. So in 2018 and latter half of 17. So these guys are technically minded drivers and they can probably help with the 2022 development of the car, but you'd need to keep them on for 2022. And I just don't think they're two drivers who would be in a position to stay on for 2022. And it just feels really strange.
That's an excellent point. I think I made that point with why Mercedes should have taken George Russell just to give him the year in, rather than coming in when there's new regulations. Because I think next year, unless a driver is doing, awful compared to a teammate like Albon, for example, a team should continue with the two drivers they had. So I think that's a great point great point, Freddie.
Just on that with Haas, they need to bring in they should be looking to bring in a better test driver, because at the moment they've got Delatraz and Pietro Fittipaldi, which I think I'd be looking to bring in a better reserve driver. Maybe Hulk.
Well, yeah, that's the question. We've got Sergio Perez is out of contract. Nico Hülkenberg has been obviously chipping at the sidelines a lot this year. He's not being really likely to get into one of these back of the grid seats. It seems to be a way up between Hülkenberg and Perez for Albon's seat, and Tsunoda is apparently looking all but confirmed for AlphaTauri. He's got a test coming up at Imola in the AlphaTauri next week. So there's still a few questions. And we were talking earlier about the talent on this grid and the fact that we've got such talented drivers avoiding being left out it's a worry. But I mean, there's still other talented drivers there to pick up the pieces. Max Verstappen has apparently said, this is a rumor I heard, I don't know whether it comes from a leak or whether it just comes from a speculation, but Max Verstappen apparently wants Hülkenberg rather than Perez, because I think he thinks Perez is actually really quite good.
I mean, that would be a reason to hire Perez, I think.
I think so too. And I think, yeah, that's the best direction for this driver market to take, is for some of the decisions that appear, it's silly season, they appear to be silly decisions. But some of the decisions could be saved in terms of 2020 looking a bit better for everyone's credibility if Perez gets the seat at Red Bull, in my opinion. All right, that wraps it up for us then. Pretty decent race. Hamilton's now won at 29 different racetracks. Nigel, that's what you said, wasn't it? 29?
Yes, 29. He's also won 72 races with Mercedes, just like Michael Schumacher won 72 with Ferrari.
Oh, so he's not going to win anymore. That's the 93rd victory for Lewis Hamilton. And yeah, no stopping him. He can win the title. Next time out in Turkey, we've got a mid-week podcast, mid-race podcast coming out next week, and then we'll have our preview episode for the return to Istanbul Park for Formula One. One I did not see coming, actually. This is the one that surprised me the most this year. Anyway, you can check us out on our personal Twitters and on our account Twitter page for the podcast. So at Winging It F1, I'm at FredCoates1999. Nigel is at Nigel C. Journo, and Adam is at Adam Dickinson 01. You will be able to see us tweet articles we write, opinions we have, and give us a little bit of an ego boost. So that's the most important part. And anyway, you'll be able to catch us back here on your podcast provider, be it YouTube, be it Spotify, be it Acast, be it whatever you want. And anyway, thanks very much for listening and watching. Have a good time.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.